There are some people who enter your life like a storm, captivating and irresistible on the surface, but hiding a whirlwind of chaos beneath. I once believed I had found that person, Shannon, the woman I thought was my soulmate. But the truth was far more painful than I ever imagined. The very first time I met Shannon, there was something in her eyes that made my heart skip a beat, a magnetic charm that I couldn't resist. Everything seemed perfect, and I was blindly convinced I'd found true love. But soon, that perfect veneer started to crack, revealing a side of her that only I had to endure. My story is not just one of a broken relationship. It's a tragedy of betrayal, of deep conflicts between me and the woman I called my wife, and most painfully between me and my own family. Shannon didn't just deceive me. She twisted everyone I trusted most against me. My family, those I thought would stand by me through anything, chose to believe her lies and push me away as if I were a stranger. I'm here to share the dark days I went through, the wounds that never fully healed, and how I found light at the end of the tunnel. A new chance, a new love, and a new life. But first, let's go back to where it all began, so you can understand how a fairy tale romance turned into the worst nightmare I've ever faced. Have you ever felt abandoned by your family for something you didn't do? Share your story in the comments. I'm not just here to tell. You should know. I'm here to listen. I still remember the first time I saw Shannon. It was like a scene out of a movie, the kind of moment you think only happens to other people. She had this magnetic presence, something about the way she smiled, the way she moved through the room that pulled me in without me even realizing it. At 42, I thought I was too old for fairy tale beginnings, but there I was, completely captivated. We met through mutual friends at a small gathering. I was nervous, more nervous than I'd been in years, but something about Shannon calmed my nerves and made me want to open up. My younger self was hopeful, maybe even naive. I was ready to believe she was the one. But Shannon wasn't like me. She was upfront from the start, honest in a way that cut deep. She didn't share the same feelings. She made it clear she didn't want a romantic relationship. That hit like a punch in the gut. I had to wrestle with that reality, the sting of rejection, the fragility of hope. But I admired her honesty. Instead of turning away, I chose to stay in her orbit. We moved in the same social circles, ran into each other at parties and events. I treated her like a friend, always polite, always careful not to cross a line or make her uncomfortable. Little did I know, that patience would be the groundwork for everything that came after. One night changed everything. Shannon was clearly drunk at a party, vulnerable and needing help. I found myself stepping in, calling a cab, making sure she got home safely. She thanked me later, and for the first time, I thought maybe those walls she'd put up were starting to crack. We began to talk more, laugh together, and slowly something shifted. It was subtle, but it was real. When I casually asked friends if anyone wanted to be my date for a work party, Shannon surprised me by saying yes. That night, the way she looked at me felt different. We were laughing, sharing stories, moments that felt genuine and new. She invited me back to her place, but I hesitated, wanting to make sure that what was happening wasn't just a fleeting moment fueled by alcohol and the party atmosphere. I left her that night, feeling a mix of hope and caution. Then came the message that changed everything. Shannon admitted she'd started developing feelings for me, scared to say it out loud, afraid of being rejected again. She told me my kindness, my respect, and who I truly was had broken down her defenses. It was overwhelming. After months of hope and heartbreak, she was finally willing to give us a chance. We went on our second date, and it felt like the start of something real. But beneath the surface, there were warning signs. Shannon's desire for luxury and control clashed with my values. She had no qualms about throwing away things I cherished, demanding a lifestyle neither of us could comfortably afford. At the time, I brushed these off as quirks or sacrifices for love, but now I see them as red flags, the first cracks in a fragile foundation. I won't lie, there were moments of joy. We shared laughter, late-night talks, a connection that felt deep. But alongside there was confusion, frustration, the slow suffocation of my own needs and boundaries. I was falling hard, convinced love could fix everything, blind to the way Shannon was shaping the story, not just of us, but of my life. And then came my parents. Shannon became a favorite to them, the daughter they never had, the bright light they clung to. They were charmed by her warmth and her story of a broken past, and I was left on the outside watching the people I loved slowly turn away. I thought love was enough to hold us together, but I was wrong. As I look back now, I understand the pain of being caught between two worlds, between the woman I loved and the family I lost, between hope and heartbreak, between who I was and who I had to become. But that is just the beginning. When Shannon and I officially started dating, it felt like I was living a dream finally within reach. The laughter, the late-night talks, the moments when she looked at me with a softness I had never seen before, it all felt so real, so promising. I wanted to believe we could overcome anything. But as the months passed and we moved in together, the cracks I had ignored began to widen. Shannon had a taste for the finer things in life: designer clothes, high-end apartments, dinners at fancy restaurants. At first, I thought it was just part of her charm, someone who wanted to enjoy life. But soon, it wasn't just a preference, it was an expectation. I remember the day she insisted on renting a luxury apartment, one that was way beyond what we could realistically afford. When I hesitated, she argued fiercely that since I earned more, I should cover most of the rent. It wasn't just about money, it was the way she demanded it, as if it was my duty to provide without question. This was my first real red flag, but blinded by love and hope, I pushed my concerns aside. I wanted to make her happy, to build a life worth sharing. Yet within those walls, I started to feel smaller, my opinions dismissed, my belongings rejected. When I brought in my furniture, pieces I had collected over years and held dear, Shannon didn't just dislike them. She outright told me to throw them away, calling them cheap and tacky. I was devastated. That furniture wasn't just decoration. It was part of my identity, my history. But fighting it felt futile. To keep the peace, I relegated those pieces to a storage room, a silent sacrifice that chipped away at my sense of belonging. Friends tried to warn me. My close buddy Mike, who had watched Shannon's behavior grow more demanding, pulled me aside once. "Man, it's not right how she's treating you," he said. "You're bending over backwards, and she's only taking and taking." But even hearing that didn't change the way my heart clung to the idea of us. I was caught in a web of love, denial, and the desperate hope that things would get better. At the same time, there was a disturbing shift in how Shannon wanted to control not just our financial lives, but the emotional and social. She was charming and warm to everyone, but had a sharp edge for me, a constant nagging, a refusal to compromise, and a knack for turning small disagreements into mountains. When neighbors or co-workers invited us out, she'd say no, wanting to keep the focus entirely on her terms. I remember one tense afternoon arguing about bills with her. The more I tried to explain that we needed to be partners, both contributing and sharing, she snapped, "You're the man. It's your job to take care of me." The word stung like a slap. I wasn't just hearing old-fashioned notions. I was being dismissed, my hard work and sacrifices taken for granted. Those moments planted seeds of doubt and sadness deep within me. I questioned my worth, the meaning of partnership, and whether this relationship was what I truly wanted. But every time I thought about leaving, there was a part of me that held on to the memories of laughter, the good times, and the hope that Shannon might change. Meanwhile, Shannon's bond with my parents grew stronger. They adored her, this vibrant, charming woman who seemed to fill a void in their hearts. My mother, always traditional, admired Shannon for fitting their image of the perfect daughter-in-law. But that only added to my isolation. At family dinners, I could sense the subtle shifts, the knowing looks, the conversations I wasn't part of, that slowly pushed me to the sidelines. I was trapped between two worlds, a woman I loved, but who was changing into someone I barely recognized, and a family who was slowly but surely siding against me. The burden weighed heavier every day. Looking back, those months were a turning point, not just for our relationship, but for me as a person. I was beginning to see the cracks in my own self-worth, the way love can sometimes blind us to the warning signs screaming beneath the surface. But the real collapse was yet to come. As time went on, the shine of love started to dull, replaced by a growing tension I could no longer ignore. The financial strain wasn't just about numbers. It was a symbol of everything falling apart beneath the surface. Shannon's decision to quit her job blindsided me. We hadn't even fully recovered from the strain of balancing expenses, and suddenly, I found myself carrying the entire weight alone. It wasn't something she discussed with me first. One morning, she simply told me, "I don't want to work anymore. I want to be a good wife and stay home." At first, I thought maybe it was just a temporary break, a way to recharge. But days turned into weeks, and instead of pitching in around the house or showing support, she retreated into gaming and long hours in bed. When I brought up my concerns, she dismissed me, saying I was nagging or not understanding her. The bills piled up. Rent, utilities, groceries, all on my tab. I started dipping into my savings, trying to keep us afloat, but the stress was crushing. There were nights I sat alone in the dark, wondering how I'd lost control of my own life. My best friend, Sam, noticed the change in me. "You're burning out, man. You can't keep this up alone," he warned. But breaking away felt impossible. Part of me blamed myself. I was supposed to be the provider, the rock, the foundation. Was I failing? The emotional distance grew with the financial divide. Shannon withdrew more and more. Her affection withheld like a punishment. No more date nights. No comforting touches. The warmth we once shared vanished beneath cold silences and unspoken resentments. House chores became my solo mission, and every reminder of importance that I wasn't enough cut deeper. One afternoon, frustration finally boiled over. We argued, loudly. She accused me of not supporting her dream of a blissful married life, while I tried to explain the crushing reality that her choices were pushing me to the edge. She contradicted every word, telling me it was my duty to carry us both, and when I pleaded for partnership, she threatened to involve my mother in the dispute. That's when things took a darker turn. Shannon would call my mom behind my back, painting me as the bad husband, cold, controlling, unfaithful. To my shock, my mother, who had always stood by me, started siding with Shannon without hearing my side. My world shrank as family members who once offered unconditional love turned their backs, convinced by false stories swirling around them. My brother tried to reach out, saying, "Dad and Mom have their heads stuck in the past. Don't let them make you feel less than you are." But even his words couldn't stop the growing isolation. Inside me, a war raged between hope and despair. How could the woman I loved and the family I trusted both betray me? Their rejection wasn't just painful, it was a fracture in the foundation of my sanity. But amid the storm, I made a quiet promise to protect myself, to find the truth, and one day, to reclaim my life. This chapter of my story is the darkest, where love turns bitter and betrayal stings the deepest. But it's also where I began to learn resilience, strength, and the painful but necessary journey toward healing. Next, I'll share the devastating discovery that shattered the last pieces of my marriage and the gut-wrenching battle that followed. The turning point that forced me to choose between destruction and survival. The day I discovered Shannon's infidelity is etched into my memory like a scar I carried deep inside. I wasn't searching for proof or expecting betrayal. I was just going through the bills, trying to make sense of every charge, every call. That's when I noticed the calls, multiple calls to the same number on her phone bill, numbers she had never mentioned. A knot tightened in my stomach. I confronted her, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was anything but calm. "Who's this?" I asked, holding up her phone. She rolled her eyes, brushing it off like it was nothing. "Just a guy I met online," she said casually, like it was no big deal. But it was a big deal. And then she dropped the bombshell. "Maybe there's more between us. He definitely wants more." My world shattered in that moment. My hands shook, my chest tightened. I scrolled through her messages, trembling with disbelief. The words I read made my stomach churn. Graphic messages, intimate details, and the cruel reality that she had already fallen out of love with me. Worse, she confessed to using me as a cash cow, someone safe to live off of while she sought excitement elsewhere. The man on the other end, called me a foolish nerd, treating me like a fool with contempt. I never imagined the woman I loved could be capable of such cold betrayal. I stood frozen, betrayed, humiliated, furious. Shannon looked at me with indifference, as if she didn't care about the devastation she had wrought. That's when the fight began, the loud, painful argument that felt like the final fracture in our relationship. I demanded the truth. She taunted me with suggestions of an open marriage, a twisted bargaining chip to keep control. When I insisted on divorce, she refused, threatening to drag my parents into her chaos. And drag them, and she did. Shannon spun lies, painting me as the unfaithful husband, the villain trying to disgrace her. My heart broke further when my parents, those I expected to stand by me, believed her. My mother called me in tears, furious and accusing me of betrayal, while my father scolded me harshly for failing as a husband. No matter how much I begged them to see the truth, they refused. It was like watching my family choose a stranger over their own son. My closest friend, Mike, tried to be my anchor. "Don't let them get to you," he said. "Their minds are clouded, but you know who you are." Yet their absence cut deep, not just from Shannon, but from my own blood. That betrayal by the woman I loved and the family I treasured brought me to my knees. The pain wasn't just heartbreak. It was a profound loss of trust, not only in others, but in myself. But from that rubble, I found a spark, the will to fight back, to reclaim my story, and finally to free myself. The hardest betrayal I ever faced wasn't just from Shannon. It came from my own family. The people I trusted the most, who I thought would stand by me no matter what, turned their backs in the darkest hour. It felt like the ground beneath me crumbled, leaving me alone in a cold and silent void. When Shannon started telling my parents stories about late nights, about lipstick on my shirt, about imaginary affairs, I was stunned. How could they believe lies woven so cunningly? I tried to explain, to show them proof of her infidelity, but my words fell on deaf ears. My mother's voice, once comforting, became sharp and accusing. "How could you break your vows?" she demanded in tears. My father's disappointment was palpable, filled with bitter words that crushed what little confidence I had left. Every family gathering turned into a battlefield where I was the enemy, the black sheep who had failed everyone. My brother, who used to call me regularly, slowly distanced himself, caught in the crossfire of divided loyalties. Friends whispered and took sides, and I felt the crushing weight of isolation, as if I had lost not only a wife but an entire world. One afternoon, I remember sitting alone in my childhood room, walls full of memories, and breaking down in a way I never thought possible. The betrayal cut so deep because it wasn't just about being abandoned. It was about losing family, something I thought was unbreakable. Yet, in the midst of that darkness, my therapist became a lifeline. On the days when despair swallowed me whole, their words offered a fragile hope, reminders that my worth wasn't defined by others' beliefs. Slowly, through tearful sessions and sleepless nights, I began to reclaim myself. Even Mike, my steadfast friend, refused to let me drown in self-pity. "You're not alone in this fight," he said, organizing small get-togethers with mutual friends to remind me there was still love and loyalty beyond family walls. The pain of being cast out by those I loved forced me to grow in ways I never expected. I learned the brutal truth that sometimes the people meant to protect you can hurt you the most. But I also discovered resilience within, a strength to stand tall, to rebuild from the wreckage. That chapter of isolation, though heart-wrenching, paved the way for a new beginning. And that beginning came in the form of someone unexpected, someone who would teach me that love could heal even the deepest wounds. After all the heartbreak, betrayal, and isolation, I found myself standing at a crossroads I never expected to reach. The man I was before, filled with hope and love, felt like a distant memory. But deep inside, something quietly refused to give up, the will to heal, to rebuild, and to find happiness again. Therapy became my sanctuary. The first few sessions felt like pulling teeth confronting pain I had buried too deep, untangling lies I told myself to survive. But slowly, those quiet moments in the therapist's office started to work their magic. I began to see my worth again, not defined by Shannon's betrayal or my family's rejection, but by who I truly was beneath it all. One afternoon, my friend Mike sat with me in a small cafe, his voice steady and warm. "You don't have to carry all this alone," he said. Those words hit home. Together, we reached out to old friends, rebuilding connections I thought were lost forever. Each smile and genuine, "How are you?" reminded me I wasn't as alone as I'd felt. Then came Kylie, a woman who entered my life quietly but changed everything. She was honest, independent, and saw me for who I really was. With her, I didn't have to hide my scars or pretend to be someone I wasn't. Our conversations felt like safety nets, catching me when old wounds threatened to pull me down. For the first time in years, love felt simple and sincere. Our relationship grew naturally, built on mutual respect and understanding. We shared dreams, fears, and quiet moments where no words were needed. When she told me she was pregnant, I was overwhelmed with a joy I hadn't dared to feel in a long time. A fresh start, a new chapter full of hope. But even with this new beginning, the ghosts of the past lingered. My parents remained distant, their support lost to years of misunderstanding and division. When they learned of my engagement, their reactions were bitter, but Kylie and I chose to protect our happiness, closing that painful chapter for good. Standing here now, as I hold my wife's hand and prepare for the arrival of our child, I realize that healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about using those scars to grow stronger. The pain shaped me, but it doesn't define me. I'm no longer the man lost in betrayal. I'm a man who survived, who found love again, and who is ready to build a future filled with peace and joy. This journey wasn't easy, but it was worth every tear and every fight. And for anyone out there feeling lost in the storm, know this: the sun will rise again, and so will you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced betrayal or family struggle, please share your experience in the comments. We're not alone in this.